I was born in this village. This is in the Transkei somewhere, and it's called Dujini. I spent the first 10 years of my life there. And the interesting thing there about this place is that by the age of 10, I had already quit smoking weed. And I went to this school. This school has become very sophisticated. It's very different from when, you know what I'm saying, when I went there. I mean, they're like proper bricks now. You know, they were like, when I was there, it was like there were huts. You know, that's where I went to school. And this tree, I have a very interesting story about it, but it's just going to take too much of my time, so I can't really talk about it. And this is where I grew up, my grandfather's house, and I used to milk cows, you know, do the typical things that, you know, head boys do, and this was my life. And I used to go up that mountain. I hated it. And this is one of the reasons when my white friends are like, oh, let's go climb some mountain. I'm like, why? What for? I used to do this all the time. I'm not going to do it for fun. And so I started going to school at a very young age. I was quite young, and my mother cheated and said that I was older than I was. And so I started going to school. And the village, you didn't really find young men. You found old men, and you found women and children. And as a result of this, and people were quite illiterate at the time. And so, I mean, we used to see a car like once in a while, and we would chase the boys, we would chase the cars with more enthusiasm than dogs. And so what had happened here was that these women, when they got letters from their husbands, is that they would ask me to come and read these letters. I was probably the youngest literate person in the village. And I think the reason they used to ask me was because I am, you know, I probably cannot comprehend what I'm reading. I'm just reading and I'm saying whatever is on the letter, but the concepts don't really make any sense to me. And then they would dictate to me, you know, their responses. And what I come to realize now is that what happened with that is that I didn't realize the power that I had. Because I could have asked them, you know, hey, show me the money. I didn't think about that. I could have participated. I didn't understand the power that I had. That is how I say participation works, is that you've got to understand for you to be able to participate properly. And I say that it is actually, when we're talking about this whole thing, it is not actually power to the people. For me, it's actually power to the participants. That's what it is. If you participate, you have power, which is essentially the theme that seems to be running through today. There's a great philosopher, I love this guy, who says something very interesting. He said that, great philosopher, Woody Allen, you might have heard of him. And Woody Allen says that 90% of success is showing up. And now this is the thing, is that like a lot of these people don't participate. So how are they going to be successful in this field if they are unable to participate? So what I have to say is that 90% of being heard online is that you've got to show up. So if you don't have access and you cannot show up, then you're not going to participate. And the funny thing is that you have a lot of people who are, I wouldn't say they really participate, but they are spectators, let me put it that way. You see something on the internet, oh, I like it, nice video, I'll pass it on, pass it forward. They merely endorse what they see, or they forward it to share their disgust. That's what usually happens when you see things on the internet. And I want to share a little story about how, how I learned, basically, about this whole thing, about how to get attention, I suppose. Because I think that when you're on the internet, you have to find a way of getting people's attention. You've got to find a way of people to buy into you, to understand what you're saying and why they should listen to you. And I remember, like, when I went to AAA in Cape Town, beautiful place. Went up that mountain like once because my cousin was there visiting, and she paid for me to go up the mountain. So I was like, I'll go. And I dropped out of AAA because I didn't have money. And I basically, this is annoying. So what happened was that I had a very difficult time, I think, during my 2 years there. And what happened was that I couldn't afford anything, so I ended up not having a place to stay. So I was homeless for a while, for the final 3 or so months, when I was there studying. And I remember sleeping on a flat that was being renovated. So I'd get out there like around 7, 8 o'clock when no one was there. No one could see me creeping in. And then I'd clear the rubble, and then I'd sleep there. And then make sure that, like, okay, I get up very early, replace the rubble so that they don't lock the place, okay, so they don't lock it for the next day, because I need to go back, And this is how I lived there. But then these bastards one day came early, and like very early, and I got up and had to grab, because I always dress clothes, because I was like, in case people arrive, I've got to be ready to run. And I had to ran out with this small bag and my shoes and ran, and trying to decide how am I going to stay. And I ended up staying at college, at the AAA. And what was really annoying is that if you're studying the arts or advertising, is that there are always people working late, there are always deadlines, and now there are these idiots are working until 3 in the morning. I'm trying to sleep on the desks, and I cannot do it. So they inconvenienced me quite a lot. It's my place, and I was too polite to tell them to go home. So now I ended up dropping out because I couldn't do this. I couldn't do it anymore. So for a year after I dropped out, I still had a passion. I still wanted to do advertising. So what did I have to do? How could I get attention? How could I make sure that I still get into this industry that I want to get into? I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. This was my CV. I faxed the CV because, it was back in the day, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if you can see there. So I wrote this in bullet point form. I wrote, I live in Pinelands, not Guguletu. I can use phones, faxes, and computers without breaking them. I am not a member of COSATU. So any of those of you who don't know, but COSATU is a trade union that will strike at any opportunity. Actually, I remember Nelson Mandela many years ago when I was still president. He was trying to get money from some German investors. He went there and he said, yeah, we want you to come and invest in this country, but you should know that we have a trade union that will strike at every opportunity. And then some of my best friends are white. And then I wrote a bullet in bold, and I wrote position applying for. Now, remember this. Now, this was a tall order because I hadn't finished my studies. I had studied art direction, but I wanted to become a copywriter. So, position applying for, I said copywriter. And then experience in this field, this is my headline. And I used to write slogans like Free Mandela, one man vote on township walls. And then I said, as you might have noticed, this was a very successful campaign. So I got the phone call from this very incredible at the time, it was one of the most celebrating advertising agencies in Cape Town. And so I got a phone call that day, and she was laughing on the phone. Oh my goodness, you have to come for the interview. So I went for the interview. They were not hiring, but they hired me anyway. But the pay was horrible. So what I found is that you have got to create a different narrative for yourself. And this is what you've got to do about the internet, is that there has to be a narrative about who you are. And if you don't, someone else is going to create that narrative for you. So when I got this job, I'd already created a narrative of who I am before I'd even met them. Whereas if I just gone there with my CV and sat down, a narrative was going to be created for who I am and who they expect me to be. But I already told them who they should expect me to be. This is, if they cannot buy this, then I don't want to work for them. Okay, there we go. So, and my feeling is that our careers are really an extension of who we are. They are really part of who you are, and it should, especially people who are in the creative fields, because ideas come at any time. So, and thank goodness we have cell phones now, because you just whip it out and write whatever idea that you have. And that is why you've got to make sure, well, this is what I do when I'm out, because I'm also a columnist, actually. We happen to write for the same News 24 with Prince. But it's that like you always have ideas, and that you've got to remember that they are like, for me, they are like part of who I am. And I'll talk a little bit about YouTube. Is that when I joined YouTube, it was by default. It was not like a thing that really happened to me. Is that I joined YouTube because when I made my first video in response to somebody. But that response really got a good response because it was a very moving video, I suppose you could put it that way. And it created a narrative about who I am. So I was able to participate. And because I participated, then people bought into me, into who I am. And there's a very interesting thing about people buying into you, is that they may not really buy into what you say, but they buy into you. They buy into your ideas, they buy into your mind space. And that is the important thing, that people have got to understand that there is that distinction. Let people buy into you, even if they don't buy into what you say. So the value of relationships on the internet is that there was a time when I wanted to make a video. I wanted a raise for my bosses. And I decided to make this video and appeal to people all over the world. And I said, guys, my bosses are so-and-so, and so-and-so. I mentioned them by name, and I said, I want to get a raise. I haven't had a raise. So what I want you to do, I would love for you if you actually made a video asking my bosses to give me a raise. And I got over 100 video responses. And the interesting thing, though, is that the reason those people actually responded and made those videos is because we had developed a relationship already. And that is the key thing on the internet, is that relationships are probably the most important things. Is that even if you don't respond to every comment on your video, even if you don't respond to every email, because people can see you, or they have a sense of who you are, because they've bought into your narrative that you present to them like every week or every day, then they will do the things that you ask them to do. Funny enough, I was shocked that I had so many people. And not at the time, I don't think anyone in South Africa knew actually on the internet, on YouTube. And I had specifically designed, I wrote my name as Khaya V, so that if someone wanted to search for me, they would never find me on YouTube, because I don't want South Africans, because it's crazy. You're just going out there and you're doing these stupid things. I don't want to be embarrassed when I see people walking down the streets. So, anyhow, and a very interesting event happened in my life is that I used to write a lot because I had two channels. One was my comedic channel, and the other channel was political Khaya. That's what I called it. And I used to make a lot of political commentary. And at the time, Barack Obama was running for the presidency of the United States. And I used to make a lot of comments, and people were like, shut up, he's not gonna win, he's a black guy, you don't know what you're talking about, go back to Africa, and all of that. I was like, but I am in Africa, what are you talking about? and they were all so shocked to see, they'll be like, I made these videos, and like, in fact, there was a narrative that I actually represented for South Africa. It was, they could see outside, oh my goodness, with computers and cars, it was amazing. So it was totally incredible for them, but it was, so what happened was that I got a lot of attention. In fact, from the people, YouTube offices themselves, I'd get in fact, I even got an email from one of the founders of YouTube. I was like, oh, we love your videos, oh my goodness, it's so funny, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah. And, and I wanted to frame the email, but, I still haven't done it. But, so I decided so they sent me an email that said, we know you talk a lot about Obama. He's come to the offices. Would you like to ask him a question? And I was like, sure. I'd like to ask Obama a question.
Senator Obama, welcome to YouTube.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
I guess you've virtually been here for a while through your YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
But it's good to have you here in person, and we're going to ask you a few questions from YouTube users today. One of the interesting questions actually came from a user in Africa, in South Africa. His name is Khaya, and his question is, Barack, is it okay if I call you Barack? My name is Khaya, and I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. Do you think that Africa will have unreasonable expectations of you since you have strong ties with Africa because of your father?
It's an interesting question. When I went to visit Kenya, there was this sense of, I'm a senator from the United States, and somehow I must be bringing, all sorts of benefits
Sure.
to Kenya. And I had to explain to people, look, I'm a United States Senator representing the people of America. What I can do as president is to make sure that the American people understand our fates are linked with what happens in Africa. That if there's disease in Africa, that disease can get on a plane and end up in Des Moines, Iowa. If there's genocide in Africa, that creates violence and chaos in the lives of young men who eventually might bring that violence and chaos to our shores. So what I want to do is to make the American people understand that our own safety and security is wrapped up with the security and prosperity of people in Africa and all around the world. That's part of the job of the next president.
Well, a lot of your rhetoric around foreign policy has to do with your identity as a multicultural, multiracial candidate, and a lot of our users asked about your identity. Is your foreign policy as much wrapped up into sort of who Barack Obama is as it is in terms of your ideas? I mean, is your campaign as much about identity as it is ideas?
No, I don't think so. I think that I oppose the war in Iraq because of ideas. I believe in talking to the leaders of other countries, even when we don't like them, because of my perception of how our strategic interests can be served. So, on most of these issues, they're grounded in policy. What I do believe is that I can be a more effective messenger for some of my policy ideas because I've lived in another country, because my father came from a small village in Africa. I think that allows me to communicate these ideas more effectively, and I think the world will take in what I have to say with a more open mind.
As you can see there, what happened is that because I participated, and not only because I participated, is that like people who watched my videos gave me the power. It was not because I merely participated, it's because I participated, people buying into me, and they are the ones who gave me the power to the individual, and that individual is me. I may not really represent what they want, but they are rising me. They're causing me to rise. And the interesting thing that there's this thing that I talk about, and I call the divided era, is that this is the age that we live in, the divided era. And, attention. And because people are, if you're watching television, you're busy checking on Twitter, you're busy watching on what your friends are saying on Facebook. And this was the same thing that happened with that interview with Obama. Obama knew that even though he wasn't really running for an African to be voting for him, the reason he answered was because he knows that by doing that, he is creating some sort of goodwill, for these Africans. That's what he was doing there. Not because I was getting some votes from me. Okay. And so what I talk about is that the fact that sometimes I find myself giving some of my undivided attention. Then I have to snap out of it very quickly, bang on Facebook and Twitter. And this is the era that we live in. Okay, and I actually wrote about this on Twitter the other day, is that is the era that we live in. And I think that like when you're looking at TV and radio and all sorts of things, this is something that everybody has got to understand. So I'm rushing very quickly. And the interesting thing there is that also says that Twitter has made it possible for everyone to be quotable. But the thing is, not everyone is actually going to be quotable. Who's going to be quotable is that power to the individual. That person who gets followed a lot, the person who gets commented, that is the person. Even if they haven't said the smartest thing, it's because people seem to buy into that person, into that individual, into that narrative they created for themselves. So this is what I mean when I'm saying that it's power to the individual. And it is thanks to the power, giving the power. So what I believe is that we need to teach more people to show up on the internet. Then we will truly have power to the people. And so this is how it happened, that someone from some rural village, some horrendous school, ended up asking the future president of the United States a question. I thank you.